parallel using those angle pairs that we've gone over. Okay, so at the top here, if we have alternate interior angles, okay, so that's one of our angle pairs, and those are congruent to each other. Okay, so if we see those alternate interior angles and you know that they're equal or congruent, then you can conclude that lines are parallel. Okay, how we use that in our proof is AIA converse. Now converse means backward. So if you remember when we were first going over parallel lines with these angle pairs and saying they were congruent, we were given parallel lines, and then we could say our alternate interior angles are congruent. So that's where we wrote if parallel, then AIA congruent. Now here we're doing just the opposite. That's why we're writing out converse. Okay? Next one, if we have alternate exterior angles that are congruent, then I can say that my lines are parallel. Okay, again, using this in a proof, I would say AEA converse, because we're using that converse. If we have corresponding angles congruent, then our lines are parallel. So this is our corresponding angle converse. Then if we have consecutive interior angles supplementary, then your lines are parallel. Okay, again, consecutive interior angles are your only angle pair here that would be supplementary, just so it's a little bit easier to remember. And using in a proof, we'll use consecutive interior angle converse. All right, the last two we haven't really gone over yet. So that first one there states if two lines are perpendicular to the same line, okay, then those lines must be parallel. Okay, so if I have two lines here, just to draw you a picture, and they're both perpendicular to that same line. Okay, since all of these angles would be 90 degrees, that means those two lines must be parallel. That's what that's saying. Okay, so when you write this in a proof, you have to write this out. Okay, so if two lines, I'm going to use the symbol for perpendicular. Okay, this is your symbol for perpendicular to the same line. Then you have parallel lines. So you can use those symbols if you want. If you want to write out perpendicular, you can. If you want to write out parallel, you can. The last one, if you have two lines that are parallel to the same line, then your lines are parallel. Okay, so if I have two lines here that are parallel, and those two lines are parallel to that same line, then they'd be parallel to each other. Okay, so it's kind of like the transitive property, but with parallel lines. So we call it transitivity of parallel lines. Okay, so these are your reasons. So in that second column, in your two-column proof, these would be the reasons for your statement. Okay? So these ones right here are the ones you're going to use most often, these converses. Okay? Those are to prove your lines parallel. So if you're looking at what you have to prove, in your two-column proof, and it says you have to prove that line A is parallel to line B, one of your last statements is going to be one of these converses because these prove that lines are parallel. Okay? All right. Looking at some examples here. These are kind of like your one-step proofs. Remember when we did one-step proofs in Chapter 2? These are your one-step proofs for Chapter 3. Okay, so given the following information, we have to determine which lines, if any, are parallel, then state the reason that justifies our answer. So number 1, if I have angle 3 congruent to angle 7, okay, I have to state which lines would be parallel given that information. Okay. If I look at these two angles, right, what type of angles do those look like? AIA, right? So given that they would be alternate interior angles, which lines would have to be parallel? A and B. Okay, so I would write that A is parallel to B. Now my reason behind saying that those two lines are parallel would be that AIA converse, since those were alternate interior angles. And I'm proving those lines are parallel. Okay, now I'm going to look at number 2. So if we have angle 9 is right here, angle 11 is right here. Okay, I want to identify what type of angle pair those are. CA, they're corresponding angles. Now if these are corresponding angles, what would be my parallel lines? A and B. Okay, now what's my reason behind saying that those lines are parallel? CA converse. Okay, questions on those first two? Is it kind of making sense? So before, when we were looking at those angle pairs, if I go back to 3 and 7, the line that hits both of those angles, that makes up that angle, is your transversal. Okay, so that would be line L. Okay, since line L is the transversal, that means A and B would be your parallel lines. Okay, so you can look at it that way too. All right, I want you guys to try 3, 4, 5, and 6 with the people sitting next to you if you need some help.
Rock.
Wait, what? Was your birthday on Monday?
It was.
It was? Okay, it was everyone's birthday. Duffy. Baldwin.
How old are you?
Sage.
26. You're
Jesus.
so young. You're like almost.
Isn't Alex getting cake?
Yeah.
Wait, I heard you don't even like cake, someone says. You give it to like. Would you like to save it for us?
I don't know.
Oh, I saw you walking back and I had half a cake after school.
Yeah, and I put it
And home.
Same.
Okay.
You didn't have my class yesterday.
Well, it's not my fault. It's vertical angles. Like.
You brought cake for your other
I
class?
did not bring cake. I don't like cake, so why would I bring cake?
Why did you eat the cake then?
I didn't eat it. I didn't eat it.
What's the law? Did you guys?
I did not do vertical angle awareness in my last one. Yeah, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Like vertical angle, converse, right?
Can you prove lines are parallel given vertical angles? Is that one of our reasons up here? No. All right, we're gonna look at 3, 4, 5, and 6. So number 3, we have angle 2 and angle 16. Okay, those are right here. My parallel lines would be L and M. Okay. Your reason would be alternate exterior angle converse, since those are alternate exterior angles. Number 4, we have the measure of angle 5 plus the measure of angle 12 equals 180. Okay, those two angles are consecutive interior angles. Your parallel lines then would be line L and M. Okay, and since they are consecutive interior angles, we'll use that converse. 5, we have angle 2 and angle 3 added to be 180. Okay, that means A and B are your parallel lines by the consecutive interior angle converse. Okay, last one, number 6, we have angle 13 and angle 11. What type of angles are those? They are vertical angles. Can I prove lines parallel by vertical angles? No. This is none. Okay, you cannot prove lines parallel using the vertical angle theorem. Okay, so when we go through proofs tomorrow, 2-column proofs, and I say prove that these two lines are parallel, you cannot prove them by vertical angles. It has to be one of these that we went over on the top here. Those are the only ways you can prove parallel lines. All right. We have a parallel postulate. If given a line and a point not on that line. Okay, so if I have a line and a point that's not on that line. That's what it's talking about there. Then there exists exactly one line through the point that is parallel to that given line. Okay, so through this point, you can only draw one line that's parallel to that other line that was already drawn in. You can have multiple lines that go through that point, however, those would not be parallel to the other line. Okay? That's what that postulate is saying. All right. Our next examples, we want to find x so that line L is parallel to line M. Okay, that's what this symbol means again, parallel. And then we want to identify the reason why those are parallel. So again, the stuff from the top. Okay, so those reasons from the top. So proving L parallel to M. Well, these would be alternate exterior angles. If those lines were to be parallel, how could I set up an equation to solve for x? If they're alternate exterior angles. So these two angles would be equal. Okay. Again, these were alternate exterior angles. That's why I set them equal. So now I can subtract 5x from both sides and add 20.
Good job.
X will equal 15.
So Mrs. Baldwin, what did you do for your birthday?
I worked.
Well, obviously.
Yep.
But what did you do after?
I went to work.
What do you mean?
I coach on Mondays.
Oh, so what did you do after that?
I got home at 9:30. I don't know. I went to bed.
That's a good
Yep.
Do anything this week?
Kenzie.
I usually that's what you like.
Thank you.
You're too young to.
Now that I found what X is, my reason behind these lines being parallel would be the alternate exterior angle converse. All right, number 8. Lines L and M are right here. Those are parallel. I want to identify those angles. Okay, those angles are alternate interior angles. Now, if I want those lines to be parallel, I know my alternate interior angles have to be congruent. So I can set both of those measures equal to each other. So we can take 4x plus 20, set it equal to 6x. We'll subtract 4x from both sides. And then divide by 2. X will be 10.
And that's the I.
Yes.
Now.
Okay, number 9. Any questions on 7 or 8 before I do 9?
No.
All right. Number 9, I want line L parallel to line M. And I have this angle right here with X in it. And I have this box here, which means what? 90. Okay. So what type of angles would these be?
Complementary. Oh, whoops, yeah, you know.
Okay. So these two angles are alternate interior angles.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can set them equal if I want those lines to be parallel. So we can take 3x plus 15 and set it equal to 90. Okay, subtract 15. Think quarters.
14.
Quarters.
15.
Think quarters.
15. 25.
It is.
Quarters. Oh yeah, I guess quarters not. Okay.
Like a quarter.
Well, if you were talking about a clock, quarter after that's 15.
That's not what I was talking about.
He is.
All right, for your reason, you could have two different ones. Okay, we can write A converse. Yep. Or you could have written if two lines perpendicular to the same line, then the lines are parallel. Okay, because those two lines would then be perpendicular to that same line, so they would have to be parallel. Okay, so either of those two reasons work. Questions on the front? All right, we're doing the same thing
my
on the
gosh.
back. Relax.
Okay.
I want you guys to do, I'm going to pick the
Oh
problems.
my.
10.
10.
10, 11,
Oh dang. And this should be your homework?
nope, 12.
Jeez, dude. I thought so much.
I'm going to pick the problems.
It's my
13.
birthday, too.
Bro, shut up, Kenzie.
Your birthday's April 11th. Shh. She doesn't know that.
Do those four. 10, 11, 12, 13.
I
I could look that up.
Oh, what a stalker.
It's on Infinite Campus.
Teachers are stalkers.
Mm-hmm.
My word.
Every single one of us. I'll just stop it.
Huh? Who's gonna stop mine? You do that. You wanna look at the schedule and see if they have a bottom.
What are we on today? 17.
I'm a little problem. Can you please come here? What? I'm singing the song. Is that what it is? No. Is that right? Is that right? So it's, what's 124 divided by 2?
Huh?
As a math major, I could prove that we're 4 pages long.
Why?
Because that's what higher level math classes are. They're proving different theorems. Mhm. You have to tell me, these ones are just like our first ones that we did.
Mrs. Baldwin, can you please come here?
Like this, you have to tell me which lines are parallel given that these are congruent from this picture. Yes.
Hey, go Ashley. Yeah. Can you please come back?
For what?
Hey, Ashley.
On the last one? Alright, go over there.
I wrote her a note. Oh, so now that's right.
Yes.
Stop. 52 divided by 6, huh? No. Huh? 22.
Alright, number 10. You should have alternate interior angles. Okay, you want to set those equal, so you should have gotten x is 7. And they are now parallel by the alternate interior angle converse.
I did.
Number 11, these are alternate exterior angles. So again, if you want those lines to be parallel, those should be equal to each other. So you should get x is 20. And they're now parallel by the alternate exterior angle converse. Number 12, these are corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are congruent if those lines were to be parallel, so you can set those equal. You should get x is 10. So those lines would now be equal by the corresponding angle converse. Okay, and then the last one I had you do, number 13. These angles are consecutive interior angles. So you should add them together and set them equal to 180. Okay, when you do that, you should get 22. And those lines would then be parallel by consecutive interior angle converse. if you want, you can do the last four, and I can tell you what the answers are if you want to check those. Otherwise, I do want to give you